Hi, my name is Susie Goldstein, and I am from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I wanted to tell a story about my childhood. And what I want to say is, when I was growing up, I loved my grandmother very much. She was very nice to us. I'm the oldest of 4 children, and she used to watch us a lot. My mother, she was sleeping a lot. She suffered from severe depression. My mother, she had bipolar disorder, which I didn't really know that until I got older. But my grandmother, I just noticed, one thing I noticed that was weird about her, she talked bad about her siblings. There was only one of her sisters she liked. The rest of them, she was very negative. She was a very negative person overall, but she was nice to us, her grandchildren. And she was just negative about everybody else. It was weird growing up because I used to notice weird things about my mother. Like, for example, she could never be near birds. And whenever there was a bird, we'd have to chase it away. She'd start to have a panic attack. Or she could never see mashed potatoes. Like, I didn't have any mashed potatoes growing up because my mother never would make them. I never thought anything about it because I was younger. And when I was older, sometimes I did have mashed potatoes when I was out of the house. So when I got preteen, I overheard my mother and her sister talking about their childhood. They did once in a while. They didn't say a whole lot about it. It was a very, very bad childhood. And I didn't really know until later on exactly what had happened. Then I came to find out that my grandmother severely abused them, my mom and my aunt. My aunt ran away, though, a few times, but my mother never did. She was the older one, and my aunt was 2 years younger than her. One time they were talking about the mashed potatoes, my aunt and my mother, and they were saying that, remember when Mom, that was my grandmother, made us eat the mashed potatoes, but then I was listening to their conversation, and I guess my mother didn't want them because they were lumpy and cold. And my grandmother made her sit there for hours and hours and hours. And I went into the next day, and she said she wasn't going to get up out of the table until she ate the mashed potatoes. I also found out that my grandmother would tie my mother up and keep her in the closet for like 2 and 3 days at a time. And my aunt would try to sneak by and throw her some bread inside so she wouldn't be hungry. And she wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom, so she had to go to the bathroom on herself in the closet. My mother's father was a drug addict. He died at 44 from a drug overdose. He was addicted to painkillers. And my grandmother, when I found out all these bad things that my grandmother did to my mother, I couldn't talk to her anymore. It was like, I hated her. I hated her so much because I couldn't believe she did it to my mother. And my mother went into a mental institution when she was 10 years old. She had a nervous breakdown. And her mother never visited her one time. The only person that ever visited her was her aunt. One of her aunts, Aunt Sadie, visited her. I know that my aunt wasn't allowed because she was a child, and it was very horrible. And my mother doesn't really, she didn't talk about it a lot, like I said. And one time my mom and her dad were walking across the street, and a car ran over a pigeon, and it squirted all over my mother, and they made her wear it for days and days, and that's why my mother hated birds. But I didn't know that until I was older. There was a lot of abuse in her family. And then as I got older, I understand my mother was out of her mind, and I could understand why she was. She weighed 57 pounds when she was 10 because she was starved to death. So growing up in that situation, I tried to be aware of my mother's mental illness. It was very difficult, though. She mostly just slept all the time, and that's kind of what our life was like. I had to do everything for my family. I did all the cooking, the cleaning, the washing, because my mother couldn't. And it wasn't really her fault, but she just couldn't do it. And I had to take care of everybody. And then my sister was born when I was 13 years old, and my mother couldn't take care of her. And I had to take her to high school with me because I missed so many days that I had, and they let me, because in my high school, if you had a baby, you could bring your baby to school. They gave me special permission to bring my sister because my mother couldn't take care of her. So that's, just things that had happened in my childhood. Sorry. sorry. I just want to make everybody happy because nobody in my family, my mother was so unhappy. So I try to make all my siblings happy by helping them. And my friends, when I got older, I just wanted everybody to be happy because I felt helpless that I couldn't help them. And anyways, that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much.